Ever since the episode crossover, I had always just assumed that Jake the dog of Farmworld was also biologically half shapeshifter due to performing actions like this as the Lich. Not until my review of the episode Whispers did it occur to me that not everybody thinks so. Based on the comments you've left me, there's not a firm consensus, so I thought it would be interesting to do a brief video on the topic. Let's start with a reminder of what Farmworld is. It's a world created by Finn's wish.
I wish the Lich never even ever existed.
The wish was carried out by making the mushroom bomb never go off 1,000 years ago, so the Lich, as we knew him at least, never ended up existing. Instead, Simon sacrificed his life, the Ice Crown froze the world for several centuries, and here we are in Farmworld, where few people know of magic. The magical history of the world remained intact, however, only the events during the Mushroom War were modified. Simply put, it's not the era of magic in Farmworld like it is in Ooo. A lot of strange creatures don't exist, and dogs don't talk like they otherwise would have. But Marceline is still half demon, her dead Henson Abdir and the entire Nightosphere realm must still exist, and of course the Ice Crown still exists, as does the Enchiridion. The entire magical legacy of the world prior to the Mushroom Bomb still existed unmodified up to the point where Prismo altered the world as per Finn's wish. Now let's discuss one of Jake's biological parents, at least in Ooo. While I think it's possible for this mysterious blue creature to be long-lived and have existed during the magical era of the Earth before the Mushroom War, I actually think that's probably irrelevant because the shape-shifting creature appears to be an interdimensional being. That is some heavy-duty portal casting, so my bet is this creature does not even have an earthly origin in the first place, meaning that it can very well still exist in the Farmworld timeline. The creature's existence might not be contingent on the Mushroom War having had taken place. While Jake the normal, non-talking dog never shapeshifted, well, he is just a dog in this world after all. Perhaps he never grasped this latent ability. Maybe it requires a higher level of intelligence and self-awareness to access that the talking dogs of Ooo possess, but the regular dogs of Farmworld do not. Perhaps only after Jake's body became the Lich's vessel, the Lich himself was able to draw this power out. So far, I've simply tried to make the case that it's at the very least possible for Farmworld Jake to have been half shapeshifter, but how likely is it? What evidence is there one way or the other? The original Lich transformation Farmworld Jake underwent was not necessarily indicative of shapeshifting. It could simply be the Lich taking on its standard physique after possessing a body. However, the form it shifts to and from in the episode crossover, it's hard to say that's not shapeshifting. The counter-argument would be that the Lich is simply shifting back and forth from the base dog body he took control over to the standardized Lich physique. So he can't transform freely like the Jake of Ooo, he's just swapping between two available forms. The counter-argument to that is that Jake Lich is also able to regenerate his hand in a manner that highly resembles how Jake transforms. And the Lich's final form, before being obliterated by the maid, is one that has 6 arms. That last detail is fairly easy to miss, since we see this form for only a few seconds, but I think it's by far the strongest evidence that the Lich has the potential to transform his body to the same extent Jake can. Although Jake has had a lifetime of practice, and Jake Lich has only gotten his body recently. There now remains 2 questions. Well, actually, probably a whole lot more, but 2 that I want to talk about. The first question is, why did the Jake Lich hand not change shape at all in the episode Whispers, especially since it would be useful for combat? I discussed this in my review of Whispers a little, but perhaps the miscellaneous magical mechanisms at work behind Jake's shapeshifting requires attachment to the main body. The Lich's presence can divide and change hosts. The Lich is a force in many ways. We've seen its body be destroyed, but the Lich manages to come back. However, Jake's powers are likely not ethereal. Jake's powers are tied to some physical component of his physiology. The second question is, if the Jake Lich is indeed half shapeshifter, why did it not take on the blue monstrous form Jake had at the end of Elements and in the episode Abstract? This form did have additional powers and magical resistance after all. Perhaps it's simply not an easy thing to unlock, and even the Lich was unable to access this extremely latent part of Jake. The presence of a supercharged reality-stabilizing lump anti-elemental force might be mandatory, or perhaps the Jake Lich needed more time to figure out the full potential of his body and how it works. The last thing I want to talk about is what if all the speculation is wrong and Farmworld Jake is actually not half Shapeshifter? This idea is going to be pretty wild and requires much more supporting evidence, but it's something I've briefly alluded to before in my video on Magic and Adventure Time, and I think it's fun brainstorming even if the evidence is light for the theory. What if Farmworld Jake isn't the offspring of the shapeshifting blue creature after all, but somehow the mushroom bomb was related to the creature instead? What if Jake Lich was capable of transformation because the mutagenic component present in the mushroom bomb was derived from this creature? The fluid Margaret drains from its fangs is a sickly green color after all that resembles the radioactive waste of the bomb, as is the fluid that leaks from the creature after Margaret stabbed it. Could the mushroom bomb have been derived from the mysterious creature's essence? In the land of Ooo, the creature chose Joshua as a suitable host to leave behind its progeny. Perhaps the Jake of Farmworld was also a suitable vessel to acquire transformation powers, but rather than attaining the power through biological lineage, like the Jake of Ooo, Farmworld Jake attained the power from exposure to the mushroom bomb as he became the Lich. I want to strongly reiterate that I consider this a pretty far-out idea, and the evidence is flimsy. However, if Farmworld Jake is not half Shapeshifter, that's the only alternate explanation I've come up with at the moment. And thus, because of those reasons, I do think Farmworld Jake is half Shapeshifter, but can't utilize those powers because he's a regular dog rather than a mutated Land of Ooo dog. Let me know what you think. Do you have any interesting thoughts, ideas, or disagreements? Adventure Time lore can be super messy, but the show is usually capable of avoiding major plot holes, which makes discussing all the endless possibilities quite fun, though sometimes also a bit frustrating. Like I already said, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.